School of Rock is now in session in Iowa, and we're ready to help make musicians. In our patented performance-based program, students learn music in one-on-one lessons, then have band practice in a fun, safe learning environment, all leading up to their big show. Guitar, bass, piano, drums, and vocals, our local professionals teach the skills you need to be a rock star. Come check us out and get a free lesson with no strings attached. Locations in West Des Moines and Marion. Visit schoolofrock.com to learn more and start your musical journey today.
The morning news on YourIowa.com is brought to you by the Commission on U.S. Territories, striving for equal representation around the globe, and by Keep Iowa First, committed to keeping the Iowa caucuses the first in the nation contest in selecting the presidency of the United States. And now, here's your host, Brent Roske.
Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. If you got to enjoy some of our great weather this weekend, good for you. It was beautiful. You could go outside, you could take walks, you could breathe without your lungs hurting. It was a wonderful weekend. Up on the screen right now, thanks to the Des Moines Register, Doug Burns owns some newspapers. He and myself wrote an article, and actually the owner of La Prensa wrote this article, the three of us, about keeping the Iowa caucuses first. You saw in the opening graphic there, every day of the show, we talk about keeping Iowa first. So thanks to the Des Moines Register for running it in their Sunday paper. That's their most seen edition. So thank you for the Register for that. If you missed Friday's show, Sebastian Robertson produced what you're seeing on the screen. That's Angelique Kidjo. She's a singer from Benin, Africa, along with Peter Gabriel. They recreated his anti-apartheid anthem, Biko. Sebastian Robertson produced it. He was on the show Friday. Folks, just check that out. It was an amazing episode. Up on the program today, we are going to have Dana James. She writes this publication here, Black Iowa News. She was with the Des Moines Register as well. She's going to be on in just a second, along with former State Rep Karin Derry with her Capital Roundup, and Mike Schneider with the nonprofit 100 Men on a Mission. And a quick note, this Friday, my buddy Sally Kirkland, Golden Globe winner, there's her and I from an Oscars event at the Beverly Hills Hotel a few years ago. She's going to be on Friday talking about when she was nominated for an Oscar, when she won the Golden Globe, all kinds of fun stuff on Friday. So you're going to want to check that out. But because we have some schedule needs today, we're going to bring her right up on the screen here. Here is State Rep Karin Derry. There she is. Hi, Karin.
Hey, how are you?
I am fantastic. Welcome again to the show. Every Monday, as you know, is Karin Derry's Capital Roundup. And boy, it's a lot going on at the Capitol right now. Why don't you give folks an idea what's happening?
All right. Well, last week was Funnel Week. And what Funnel Week is basically, that's a deadline where a bill has to have come out of a committee on the House or the Senate side in order to move forward. If a bill hasn't passed through a committee in either chamber as of last week, theoretically, it's dead. Now, the legislature is a little bit like zombie movies and soap operas. You know, sometimes things do come back from the dead, but that's the theory behind Funnel Week.
Boy, zombie movies and soap operas, you know, that sounds like a show I'd actually watch if it was set at the Capitol. Lots of interesting, I'll give the benefit of the doubt term, and I'll say lots of interesting bills going on that are still alive. And I think you were going to walk us through a couple of them that are still breathing. Is that right?
Yeah. So some of the things that are still eligible to move forward, some are concerning, some are good. You know, on the House side, they passed some real good child care bills that, you know, we'd like it to go further. You know, there's a lot of work to be done on the child care side, but making some progress. So that's very positive. Some not so good. You know, for example, one of the bills that made it out of committee is a housing bill, and it basically states that no longer can a municipality say that landlords can't discriminate against people who are getting federal housing assistance. And concerning about that, of course, is the disparate impact that it can have on disadvantaged communities. So that was disappointing to see move forward.
Well, and what's interesting about that particular bill is that it actually precludes the local authorities from imposing the federal penalties. Is that right?
Well, what it says is basically, so 3 municipalities in Iowa have an ordinance that says, hey, landlords, you can't not rent to somebody because they have this federal housing assistance. So, the party of local control at the legislature is coming in and saying, oh no, cities, you can't have that kind of a rule. So, kind of inserting themselves into something that, presumably these city councils know what they're doing and they're closer to the voters than the legislature is. So, my view would be, why don't you let them just do what they want to do? So
it is surprising they're trying to take away local control there. Another bill that I just think I'm just shaking my head at. They're trying to take away all background checks and no concealed carry checks. If you're 18 years old, they're trying to say, go into the gun shop, buy your pistol, put it in your pocket, you're fine.
What could possibly go wrong, right? It's just that's just the kind of extreme bills that are moving forward, and that's consistent with that constitutional amendment bill that they're moving forward, the one that adds the language from the federal Second Amendment and that strict scrutiny language would add it to the Iowa Constitution. It's very extreme. I don't think most Iowans want that.
And just explain that to viewers real quick. To change the Iowa Constitution, you have to do it 2 sessions in a row. Is that right?
Right. 2 general assemblies.
Okay.
So, for example, the Second Amendment amendment to the Constitution passed last General Assembly. General Assemblies are 2 years, 2-year General Assembly. It passed last year, and then when it passed this year, this was the second General Assembly that it passed in, and then that means that it will be on the ballot, and voters will vote on it in 2022.
So what other bills made it past Funnel Week?
Another one that really bothers me is one related to unemployment. It reduces unemployment benefits for Iowans, reduces the top level of it, and also implements a 1-week waiting period when people are, newly unemployed, that's when they're, probably most anxious. And so now they're going to have to wait an additional week, assuming the law passes.
What I'm surprised by is that, Iowa, and if I've got this wrong, please tell me. You're the former elected official. I host a program. If I've got this wrong, please tell me. But my understanding is that Iowa's got $900 million in the bank. Why are they reeling it in right now? Can't we just get a little bit farther through this pandemic before they start cutting back?
But this is something that's been on Republicans' radar for a long time. And, I suspect that special interest groups like the Association of Business Industry, powerful lobbying groups are in favor of this. And, they make substantial contributions. They have substantial power, and they want these bills passed. And while they have this strong majority is when they're going to do things that, are going to hurt Iowans.
And I know you've got a busy day. That's why we had you on right away at the top of the show today. But just kind of, more of a editorial question. You just served in the Iowa State House. You did your term, and I always tell people, in California, you get elected to state senate, at least you make $92,000 a year. Here, you make $25,000. You got to campaign all year. It's incredibly taxing for the person to do it. So I commend all of our elected officials here in Iowa. But your takeaway, is it zombies and soap operas up there? Is it just totally nuts, or do you have some sense of respect for the Iowa legislative process?
Yeah, both actually. It's kind of crazy when you first get up there. Before I served, you'd hear about these subcommittees and these committees, and then the votes on the floor is like, what? And after a few weeks, all of a sudden you go, oh, well, wait a minute. The way this makes its way through the process, that kind of makes some sense. Funnel week makes some sense. You got to have some deadlines, in order to keep things moving forward, in order to start focusing on getting things wrapped up at the end of sessions, you have to have some deadlines. So, and there are good laws that pass, like the child care bill that I talked about earlier. That's good. That's good legislation. That's helping Iowans. But yes, it is also like soap operas and zombie week. One of the bills that is dead for now is the voucher bill, because that didn't make it out of the a committee on the House side. And I hope it truly is dead. But what can happen is an amendment can be filed to another bill. It really doesn't even have to be particularly related to the other bill, because the majority is the party that gets to decide whether or not it's related. And so some things that defy logic are related to some bills and get to move forward. So, for example, in 2019, we gavelled out on a Saturday. There was a change to the judicial nominating system process, a very well-respected process that had been proposed earlier in the session. We thought it was dead. Late Friday afternoon, we found out that the majority party was going to tack that on to another bill that we were going to debate on Saturday morning. Things really that you think are gone really can come up at the last minute.
Former State Representative Karin Derry, thanks so much as always for being on Monday with your Capitol Roundup.
Thank you so much. Have a great week.
You too. And folks, don't go anywhere. Our next guest is Dana James. She created and writes the Iowa Black News. She's going to be on with us right after this message from the United Nations. Folks, welcome back to the program. On the screen right now is Dana James. She writes blackiowanews.substack.com. Welcome to the show, Ms. James.
Thank you so much for having me, Brent.
Oh, it's truly my pleasure. Truly my pleasure. Now, before we talk about specifics of what you're writing about, I always think it's fascinating. Entrepreneurial spirit, like yourself. You were with the Des Moines Register, and now you've got your own news outlet. What was it that inspired you to make that leap and start publicizing and promoting and writing your own stories?
I think I always had the dream to do it from the time that I was a child, really. But it was also my dream to work at the Register, and I was there for 7 years. So from 99 to 2006, went on from there, did a lot of other types of writing. But I think it was just something that was in my spirit to start my own thing.
It's what I really appreciate about your site and what you're doing is that obviously it gives insight into stories that we're just not getting a lot of coverage on in this state. If we look at your cover story right now, we're talking about commuting a life sentence. I was wondering if you could tell viewers a little more about that story.
Yeah, so that story is a Black Hawk County man who was convicted of first-degree murder back in 1991 under the felony murder rule, and which essentially tacks on these lesser charges so that you can get a life sentence. So he's been in there for 30 years on this charge. And the activists working in the Des Moines area really want to see his sentence commuted. He's got a parole commutation hearing coming up. And so, they're like 30 years is enough. He's, done enough time in what really amounted to kind of a stand your ground situation in his case, where he was stabbed by a gentleman. And then 2 weeks later, he sees the gentleman, he thinks flash a gun, and he fires back, and the gentleman was killed. And so, there's a push, nationally to end these life sentences. And that's really what the activists here are working on.
You have a 4-part series on your site right now. And the headline is just so striking that it's harder for Black women to leave. And then it touches on the headlines of the 4 different things: funding cuts for victim services. One is, but when they do, advocates say therapy can help, or no man is perfect. Just an incredibly intimate telling of that side of the story. Why don't you give folks an idea of what that series is about?
Yeah, so that series really focused on one of the advocates here in the Des Moines area, domestic violence survivor and advocate. And she was having this event to really bring attention and awareness to these issues of domestic violence. But once I got digging into the story, I really wanted to give people more of an updated look at not only what it was like for Black women, but what was going on with these issues, at this time. And so, I told her story about what her abuse looked like and how she overcame it, and then went on to, look at what therapy is like. And that is something that I really wanted to explain to people very well, because, there's still some stigma, in society about mental health needs. And so I wanted to make it clear for everyone reading what it would look like. And so, I spoke to a therapist. One of the other important parts of the series too was looking at religious abuse, particularly in the Black community, and how just by the virtue of, pastors in the role, how that could, help, unfortunately, keep some women in abusive relationships, because the focus is on keeping the family together. And so, and then we looked at the funding cuts that are coming, and how that could, decimate the types of victim services that Black women in particular need.
Our state to the north, my home state, Hennepin County, Minnesota, actually in particular, has a big day-to-day jury selection in the George Floyd second-degree murder case is what's going on. Derek Chauvin is charged with second-degree murder. This is how the AP is saying it, and manslaughter in Mr. Floyd's death. And they are selecting a jury. They're expecting it to take 3 weeks. Will you be focusing any on the trial in your writing?
Absolutely. Here shortly, I'm about to post a story that I wrote about my feelings on the potential for justice in George Floyd's, the trial with Derek Chauvin, and then also allowed some activists to give their opinions on the possibility of justice. And so, yes, definitely will be writing more about that. Been writing about the work of the activists ever since it happened. And so this is a very important trial. And I feel like, we're everyone's in the waiting mode to see what's going to happen with the jury selection and to follow this trial as it happens.
What I think is, obviously it's a tragic case, but what I think is one of the most interesting parts of it is that the other 3 police officers there have also been charged with aiding and abetting and manslaughter. So it's going to be a trial that will, I think it will affect the way police work is done in this country. And so a lot of people are going to be watching it. I think we're in for a long haul on this, but so all eyes will be on that. Focusing on that, obviously, but what sort of Iowa news in particular is coming out? We've had Mr. Al Womble's been on the show a couple times, and sadly, the last time was because their Zoom meeting was hacked in by racist thugs shouting horrible things. What sort of Iowa stories do you have coming up on your radar?
Yeah, I think right now the focus, obviously, is still, in the legislature with some of those bills, like you were just speaking about with her. There's still some problematic bills that are being discussed. And so I'll be continuing to follow that, but really wanting to continue to follow the work of the Des Moines Black Liberation Movement and many of these activist groups that have sprung up since the murder of George Floyd, because they're doing really amazing, transformative work here in Des Moines and in Iowa. And so I want to continue looking at their work. Another story that I'm working on has to do with Black businesses in Iowa. I've been working on a series, off again series about that. And so I'm wanting to really talk more about Black businesses, what makes it hard to start a business here, and some of the changes that we expect to come down with the SBA and with like the PPP, and seeing how that will help Black businesses here in Iowa.
You know, you mentioned Black businesses. I was actually the tech moderator for I'll Make Me a World in Iowa, and Betty Andrews is going to be on. But one of the panels that I got the good fortune, all I did was click some buttons and make sure everyone was on the screen at the same time, was their Black business leaders, and it was fantastic. So we're going to be talking about that. Marquez and some other folks were on, and we're going to be talking about that with Miss Andrews on this program. So yeah, but it just putting a spotlight on that, I think, is fantastic. And it was just one of the greatest panels I've heard about, because that panel, and then my friend Representative K.O. Bill Samad, he hosted one. He said, okay, folks, real talk about getting elected and the insights. It was, you know, people really let their guard down and just kind of spoke from the heart. And so we're going to be showing clips of that and talking more about that. So Miss Dana James, Black Iowa News. And folks, there's the website right there, blackiowanews.substack.com. But if you just type Black Iowa News in Google, it pops right up. Check it out, subscribe, and support. I applaud your entrepreneurial spirit, but also, of course, the content of what you're doing. So thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you for having me.
It's truly my pleasure. Folks, we're going to take a quick break and then be right back with Mike Schneider of 100 Men on a Mission. We'll be right back.
There's a new spin on casual dining near Drake University. Lucky Horse Beer and Burgers. Craveable faves, flatbreads, delicious burgers, frozen cocktails, and a crazy cool vibe. Get to Lucky Horse Beer and Burgers today.
Folks, welcome back to the show. You know, this platform, I'm grateful to all our guests, and what I try to do is entertain, but also educate and promote nonprofit businesses. Of course, Dana James, who's just on, is doing amazing work in journalism. But our friend Mike Schneider here, I think this is such an interesting idea. You know, a lot of times when you hear about men in the world of support, sometimes they're on the wrong end of the news. And what your group does, well, why don't you tell folks about 100 Men on a Mission?
Would love to, and thanks for having me, Brent. 100 Men on a Mission is just that. We try to get 100 plus men or more together on a quarterly basis. We have a little bit of fellowship and fun, catch up, and then in the next kind of 30 minutes time frame, guys can put their name in a hat, and if they're drawn, they get to present on a charity or a cause that is near and dear to their hearts. The men will listen to those 3 5-minute presentations. We field 5 minutes of questions and answers, and then we literally just vote for the charity or cause that spoke or reached most of the hearts in the room. And then we start writing checks for over $100 to the charity. And the goal then is just to raise $10,000 or more every quarter for a charity or cause. And that charity or cause is unsuspecting. They likely don't know that the guy, the 100 Men member, even is presenting on their behalf. And so we've surprised a whole lot of charities and causes in town, which has been a wonderful thing to do.
So you literally walk up to these charities unsuspecting and hand them a check for how much money?
Over $10,000. We've been doing that now since the first quarter of 2012. And it's been wonderful.
Wow.
And we have a fun little thing that just happened in February. 100 Plus Women Who Care is kind of a sister organization. It actually all started with 100 Plus Women Who Care. And we do a double up, a joint meeting each February for the past 3-4 years. We're likely to reach somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000 that will go to the charity that we just selected in February.
Wow, it's fantastic. And you know, the obvious thing is the power of people coming together. the power to make positive change when people come together, determined people. There's that great line, don't ever doubt that a small group of people change the world. In fact, that's all that ever has. And this is a perfect example of that. Who are some of and Mike, I'm sorry, I don't know this, but is this just an Iowa chapter? Is it nationwide? Where does it live?
Excellent question. It was birthed in Jackson, Michigan, and that's the fun little story with me. I didn't know anything about it, moved here to Iowa, stumbled upon it, and I grew up in Jackson, Michigan. I know the lady who started it, but again, had no clue that this thing even had taken off. She founded it in 2006. There was a need in the community, and they needed $10,000. She thought, well, I could get 10 friends, or I could get 100 friends. And that is exactly where it started. They raised over $12,000 to fund some cribs, and it just took off. It literally mushroomed. It is now worldwide. You'll find it all around the world, all throughout the United States for sure. That's where the majority of I think they call them chapters, but there is no real structure. There is a website that you can go to, the 100 Who Care Alliance, and they kind of are a repository for us submitting our information and having our chapter out there. So it's just more for awareness than anything else. But we're one of, I'd say 6, 7, 8 men's chapters here in Iowa. I think we were the first or one of the first. I think the Hawkeye chapter was birthed around the same time as we were. And there's been groups of men. Norwalk is an example. Red Rock is an example. And there's another group going to start up in Polk City and north part of Ankeny. And we're just going to have these dotted all throughout the state and just make Iowa, a beacon for this kind of collective philanthropy.
Boy, good for you. What a great group. And what is when someone introduces a charity or nonprofit to talk about, are there any rules as to what type or anything like that?
Loose, but yes, we try, since we're kind of West Des Moines type area, we look for that Golden Circle Central area impact. The charity could be located kind of outside the region, but if they have support mechanisms and they would focus on Central Iowa individuals, then they could be considered. We strive for a 501c3 type charity, but if the men were to vote on a cause that was not a 501c3 or any type of a nonprofit entity, we've all pledged that we will support the Democratic vote, whichever charity or cause gets the most votes, we will start writing our checks. And so other than Central Iowa, I would say there's really no stipulations. We will listen to whatever the 3 presentations are, and we will vote, and away we go.
And so is it capped at 100, or do you have more members than that? Or
we do have more, and we actually have our first ever golf outing is going to be in September. And the goal with that isn't to raise money for a charity, but the primary emphasis is to create more awareness. So for example, if we have 18 foursomes, it'll be one 100 men guy in each of those 18. They'll invite 3 friends who are not a part of 100 men. We are now marketing to 54 prospects. If we get 36 foursomes, we're at 108 prospects. And so we're hoping that guys will hear about the mission firsthand. They get to play golf, have a fun day in the fall, and realize, why haven't I been involved with this? And we hope to just grow year over year through the golf outing, in addition to the organic growth that we have, day after day type of thing. So,
and what's the website?
100, so 100menonamission.com. You can learn all about us. We have some related links also. You can check out the history of the concept that I talked about. Karin Derry is the lady. Her story is out there. The 100 plus women who care. I think the Red Rock chapter is linked there, the Norwalk chapter. And it's a fun, great, easy concept. It couldn't get any simpler, I'll tell you that much.
It's fascinating, though. You talk about once a quarter, and you've been going now for 9 years and change. I mean, you guys are coming up on $500,000 given away. And the thing is, you're each a part of it. It's not like, I've worked a little bit in the fundraising world, American Cancer Society and American Heart Association a million years ago in Los Angeles. I worked for both those organizations. And what's different about what you're doing, a lot of the work there was to put on a big event, but then go after head of NBC Universal and to try to get the one big check. And what you're saying is, let's take away the hurdle to giving. Everyone, let's find people that can sustain $100 gift every quarter and make it happen. And now, boy, you're putting some real numbers on the board. So well done to you and the group, sir.
Thank you very much.
Folks, that is our program for today. Thank you to Mr. Schneider here, Dana James, and of course, former State Rep Karin Derry for her Capital Roundup. We'll be back again tomorrow. Britt's Corner, we're going to have the first ever cooking segment on the program tomorrow. Looking forward to that. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll see you right back here tomorrow morning.
School of Rock is now in session in Iowa, and we're ready to help make musicians. In our patented performance-based program, students learn music in one-on-one lessons, then have band practice in a fun, safe learning environment, all leading up to their big show. Guitar, bass, piano, drums, and vocals, our local professionals teach the skills you need to be a rock star. Come check us out and get a free lesson with no strings attached. Locations in West Des Moines and Marion. Visit schoolofrock.com to learn more and start your musical journey today.